Hello vinyl community, it's your boy Mike here from Mike Guitar Player 07, coming at you live with another video. And today is very exciting, not only because you get to see another one of my vinyl record videos, if you're subscribed and you enjoy what you see, but also, this is my very first original content video. And what I mean by that is, all my other vinyl record videos that are not my musical performance videos have been contest entries or a challenge video of some sort. And even though those are all original, that's all me, that's all my stories, me talking about it, well, now I have something of my own. And eventually I want to do things like little things about bands and all that stuff. Maybe I'll do something about the Beatles, everybody knows the Beatles, but maybe I'll go in a little bit more about like an album or something, I don't know. I want to talk about bands, I want to talk about things that people might not know about, something I could definitely do with my grandfather's collection, because there's a whole bunch of stuff there that I know the VC doesn't talk about. For example, artists like Gene Watson and Dr. Hook. I've talked about Gene Watson here. I have not talked about Dr. Hook. I know that another channel, I can't remember the name of the channel at the moment, but they just recently got a Dr. Hook record, and they said the same thing, that Dr. Hook doesn't get any attention in VC. So maybe I'll do some stuff with some artists, individual stuff. But for today, I'm going to do something that is either really interesting or really boring, depending on who's doing it, depends on the video, and depends on the records that are being shown. But I'm going to do a recent finds video for a first original content thing. And I have a pile of however many records this is, and I'm just going to show you what I've gotten. This is by no means everything I've gotten recently. This is just the stuff I've listened to and have gone through. But because I've gotten about 100 new records within the past month, from people just giving me stuff or selling me for very, very underpriced. So I've been lucky the past month, but these are some records that I've gotten, and you know, they're not all Pink Floyd The Wall like what many people see. And that's what I mean by like boring stuff. I don't mean that it's not entertaining to watch. Obviously, people like me and other people like seeing people be excited about records, but everybody has a copy of The Wall. Everybody doesn't have a copy of a handful of these records here. Some of these records I saw in someone's collection that they were just giving me for nearly nothing. I made brownies in my pants almost. So, but anyway, I digress. Let's get through some of these recent finds. This is the only one that's going to be slightly out of order because it's a picture disc. By no means do I really collect picture discs. And I don't listen to picture discs. This has never been played, and I will never play it. The previous owner may have played it, but I will not be that person who's going to be playing it, especially an old one such as this one. I've played picture discs, whether it be at my friend's house or something like that, but they don't sound as good because of the way they're pressed. But this is, I believe, came out for the 10th anniversary of this album. This is the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band on picture disc. So what I assume to be the A side is the album cover that we all know and love. Then the B side is the drum head. So it's a pretty cool picture disc. Came in this cool little sleeve here. Still has a shrink wrap on it. I know Tunes from the Man Cave is scowling right now. But he'll also be very proud of me because I even sent him a message with a video of me taking off the shrink wrap off of a few records because he hates shrink wrap, for those of you who know Chris. But this is one of them. I want to keep the shrink wrap on the record. So, but that was a cool little find. I eventually want to get a frame for this and hang this on the wall. The next record I got would be an EP by a band called The Alarm. I assume it's just called The Alarm. This is one that I had no idea what it was when I bought this person's collection. I bought this person's collection. And it was kind of one of the handful of records. There might have been 5 in the like 60 or 70 records he pulled out for me that I didn't recognize. Asked him what it was. He said it was like rockish stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. And I enjoyed it. It's a 5-song EP. It came out in 1980 something, I believe. 83. I really enjoyed it. It's not something you really see. I've never seen it before, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. The next record I got would be Alice Cooper's The Alice Cooper Show. This is only the second vinyl record Alice Cooper album I own. I have a few stuff on CD and digitally, but this is the second record. Critics claim this to be one of his worst albums, and I haven't heard his whole discography, so I can't judge that fairly. But it's by no means the best live album out there, because this is a live album in case I haven't mentioned that already. But I really enjoyed the album. It's not one I want to listen to much, but I do enjoy the mashups of songs such as like Devil's Food into Black Widow, which I believe is how it goes on the Welcome to My Nightmare album, if I'm not mistaken. That's the album it's originally from. And I like how it goes into I Love the Dead, into Go to Hell, into Wish You Were Here. I think that's cool. The other ones are all just standalone songs that they go into. But yeah, this was a fun record. Even though it's not his best record, I definitely enjoyed it, and I enjoy Alice Cooper quite a bit. This next record is a record that I've been trying to find for a damn long while. It was one of the hardest Beatles records for me to find, because this is a Beatles record that I either see only reissues of, or I just don't see. And the day I found this record, I found two of them. And this is an original stereo pressing of this record. And I was blown away, and my friend who I was with was like blown away too, because he's never seen this either. And this would be the Beatles' Revolver. This is a U.S. original stereo pressing. It's under Rainbow Capitol label. And I really don't know what else to say about this record, rather than the fact that I was very thrilled to finally have this in my hand, because it was one of the hardest Beatles records for me to find. I'm only missing two other Beatles albums in their U.S. studio discography before I own all of them. It would be the albums Let It Be and the soundtrack to the album Help. Those are the only Beatles records I'm missing left, and I'm looking forward to the day I find it. But this was definitely the hardest for me to find. I've seen copies of Let It Be. Help, not so much. I've seen one or two copies of those here and there. But Revolver and Yellow Submarine were the hardest for me to find. And I got Yellow Submarine in near mint condition for like $16 at the Princeton Record Exchange in Princeton, New Jersey, and was blown away. I was thrilled, and I got this Revolver at a record store that I no longer wish to give business to, so I won't even name the record store that this came from. But the Beatles' Revolver. Another artist, this was another one that I've heard of but really didn't know when I bought a collection recently. This would be Blackfoot's album Marauder. And the only song I knew from this record was Fly Away. And wow, this is a great album. This is kind of like an 80s hair metal-esque kind of thing. Before 80s hair metal was a thing. It was kind of like that in-between stage of, like, say, early Kiss and early Def Leppard kind of era of music before the mid to late 80s came out with things like Poison and Rat, for example. But this was a great find. This was on the Atco. A little photo of the band there. Pardon me if I don't show the back covers of all these, but I might not end up doing that. This I saw at a record store. This was actually also at the Princeton Record Exchange. I saw this, and the album cover alone interested me. It's an album by a band called Black Prairie, and it's the name of the album is called Feast of the Hunter's Moon. This album cover alone intrigued me. It seemed like some really cool indie rock kind of stuff. Like indie rock mixed with like some country bluegrass kind of stuff. And I was intrigued, so I sampled a song or two on iTunes. And that was enough. I heard a little bit, but I didn't have good cell service in a record shop I was at. I was at the Princeton Records Exchange. And it was like $5 or $6 for this record. And it comes with the digital download. So I was like, you know what? For that price, I'm going to just blindly buy it. And boy, was I very happy. It's like bluegrassy, country, not so much the indie rock, even though it kind of has a little bit of those vibes. This came out in 2010 on Sugar Hill Records, and I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to spinning this again. I just put this on my phone with a digital download code, and it was a fun record. I don't do very many blind buys. I like to know what I'm buying. But that one was one that I got quite lucky with. This next band, I've got 2 records of. I'll show one and then the other. Blue Oyster Cult. I only owned like 3 of their records before I owned the next 2. So the first one is Secret Treaties. This is from 1974. I'm not sure if there's any hits off this record, and if there are, I didn't recognize them by title or by hearing them. The label on this is cool because it's on Columbia, but we're used to seeing the red Columbia label. And usually bands such as Blue Oyster Cult later on did their normal red Columbia label with just their little logo. Is their logo anywhere to be shown on this record? No, it is not. Is it on this one? Their logo is not shown on either of these, so I'm going to pull this out and show you what I mean instead. So, it's on a black Columbia label with their logo. And I thought that was really cool because I've never seen that before. I don't know if a lot of earlier Blue Oyster Cult, because 74 was early in their career, had that. Because the next album I have, that was, that's 74, this is 77, so actually that's quite a bit later on. So, but none of my Blue Oyster Cult records, except for this one, if I'm not mistaken, has that black and red Columbia label. So I thought that was pretty cool to see. Not my favorite Blue Oyster Cult record. I've been wanting this record for a while, saw it in this collection for cheap, grabbed it. Maybe I need to listen to it again beforehand, but I was actually kind of disappointed because I was looking forward to hearing this for so long, and it didn't match up to things like, I can't remember the name of that live album at the moment. Let me see the name of that live album. On Your Feet or On Your Knees. That's the live album. That's the earliest Blue Oyster Cult album I owned before this got into my hands. And I have Agents of Fortune and Fire of Unknown Origin, of course, but those are more mainstream compared to the 2 I got here. But I need to give it another chance. I'm keeping it in my collection either way. I've been wanting the album for a while. And the other Blue Oyster Cult record I got from 1977, yes, 1977 would be Spectres, if I'm saying that right. I have no idea if I'm saying that right, but this has the hit Godzilla. This one I did enjoy. It was fantastic. Really, it's Blue Oyster Cult. For the most part, you can't really go wrong. I loved seeing them live a couple years ago at a very local venue to me. All the original members are no longer there, and I did not get to hear them perform my favorite Blue Oyster Cult song. But they still put on a pretty dang good show for the original members that were still there, and they were still alive and kicking. Put on a fantastic show. So I was happy. But for those who don't know, my favorite Blue Oyster Cult song is Joan Crawford from Fire of Unknown Origin. The next record, I actually have 2 by this artist. These were dollar finds in a record store. I loved it. I don't like how this record store puts these huge stickers on their dollar records, because it's not like one of those like circle ones that you see at garage sales where you're able to just peel off, or one of those label maker ones where they just swipe it on and you could easily take it off. These are from trying to remove them from records in the past that I've purchased from this place for $1. Will just rip up your sleeve, so I have to leave them there unless I want a ripped up sleeve, which obviously I don't, or a ripped up cover, my mistake. But this artist is Brenda Lee. I got the album This Is Brenda and her album Emotions. I was very excited to find these. I've only recently discovered Brenda Lee's works outside of her Christmas stuff, like Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree that everybody hears non-stop every Christmas. I've been going through my grandfather's 45s, and he had a whole lot of Brenda Lee. And Brenda Lee was one of those artists back in the late 50s when she started, early 60s, when she really started taking off, where her music was on on multiple different charts. She was on the country charts, she was on the pop charts, she was on the rock charts. But these were some fantastic finds. I want to find Brenda Lee's entire discography, at least of her earlier works. So I was very excited to find those for $1 each. And I actually found those not too long after I discovered how much I enjoyed Brenda Lee. So it was like fate was there for me. And those are original Decca pressings. So I was thrilled. I'm not a big soundtrack person. I'm not a big soundtrack person, yeah. But I do enjoy Broadway musical soundtracks. And there are some movie soundtracks that I'll grab if I see them too. But I've sold off most of my movie soundtracks to get jazz records, and because I knew I could easily get the movie ones back if I wanted them again. But this is one I got also for $1 from the same place that I got those Brenda Lee ones, just in a different spree. Actually, this was a $3 record. This was not a $1 record. But either way, this is a movie soundtrack to Bye Bye Birdie. When I purchased this, I thought it was a Broadway version, but either way, I'm very happy to have it. It has Dick Van Dyke and Bobby Rydell and Ed Sullivan. So this was a great find. I was very happy to grab this. I'd be curious to hear the Broadway soundtrack version, but if I never hear the Broadway soundtrack version, I'm more than happy with this one because I absolutely love this one. This will be staying in my collection. It's on the RCA label, the original black RCA label. Love it. And this record, Emma from 8 Vinyl Low will be very proud of me for this record. I got this for $1 at Station 1 Books and Records in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey. Don't know why it was only $1 because it's in immaculate condition. Sleeve, inner sleeve, and record itself. But Cheap Trick's Lap of Luxury. I had mentioned in her contest video that I made that my mom had this on CD as a kid, but I never owned a copy myself. But now I have it. So this has The Flame, I believe, and No Mercy were the hits off this record, if I'm not mistaken. Emma, you could correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the Cheap Trick connoisseur, not me. But this has one of my favorite Cheap Trick songs on it, Ghost Town. At least of their balladier stuff. It was actually one of the very first Cheap Trick songs I ever heard. So I guess that's partly why. But Cheap Trick's Lap of Luxury I got. And I really like the label on this one. Actually, I'm going to pull it out and show you guys. The label on this is cool. It's a custom label. And the A side has the track listings for both side A and B on it. And then the B side just has a photo of the Cheap Trick logo, which is pretty cool. I liked that. So, I thought that was cool. And Emma, I hope you're proud of me. I'm venturing out into some Cheap Trick. The next record I'll be showing would be a Chicago album, Chicago 16. This is one that I've seen around in record stores all the time, never picked up, never really gave it a thought a day. And then I was thinking, you know, I like all of the early Chicago albums up through at least Chicago 10 or 11. I can't remember if it was 10 or 11 that they had. No, it was Chicago 11 was their first greatest hits album. At least through that I really enjoyed. And my parents owned Chicago 17 on CD. I now own it on record. I actually found a sealed copy, broke that open, and now it's not in a shrink. Don't worry, Chris. That was before I even started saving shrink, even though I'm starting to not save shrink as much anymore, but that's another story for another day. But I was like, you know what, Chicago 17 is very good, and I don't really know much in the non-Roman numeral albums by Chicago, because their first 11 albums were Roman numeralized until, I guess, Chicago 12 or Hot Streets, whichever. Around that time they started not putting it as Roman numerals. So Chicago 16, I was very happy to find this. It has Hard to Say I'm Sorry - Getaway, which was a very big hit. And I believe the other hit was Love Me Tomorrow off this, if I'm not mistaken. Even if it wasn't a hit, Love Me Tomorrow, it's still a fantastic record. Still a fantastic song. I was very happy. I'll be very happy to listen to that again. this one is a very unique soundtrack that I grabbed, and this is one I wasn't sure if I was ever going to own, because this is my friend's favorite movie, and the only other time I've ever seen it, I told him, go grab that, that's your favorite movie, I know you don't own the freaking soundtrack, so grab it. And he nearly made brownies in his pants, so he loved it too. But this is the soundtrack to A Clockwork Orange. Sorry, let's make it so I'm not covering up the photo. Clockwork Orange has scenes from the movie in it, has a cool gatefold with a... Oh no, it doesn't have a gatefold. My mistake. Never mind, it doesn't have a gatefold. But it has some photos from the show, or the movie. I enjoy this movie. Not the best movie on the face of the earth, but it's a good movie. It's definitely not for everybody, and if you're younger and watching, I most certainly do not encourage you to watch it. But what I really like about this soundtrack is, I don't know if anybody is familiar with Walter Carlos's Switched on Bach record that came out in the late 60s, if I'm not mistaken. But he helped compose or created compositions of classical music for this soundtrack with his little Switched on Bach synthesizer stuff. And Walter Carlos is one of the first people who ever recorded and used a synthesizer and released music like it, because it has like a version of the William Tell Overture with the synthesizer and all that stuff, but also there's some other classical tunes that use the orchestral stuff, like the Ninth Symphony, mainly the Ninth Symphony, and Pomp and Circumstance, which people know more famously for the graduation song that you play in 8th grade, high school, and when you graduate college. And the only other song that... It's obscure compared to the rest of the soundtrack. It makes sense if you know the movie and you know the story, but it also has Singing in the Rain from the movie Singing in the Rain is on this soundtrack. If you've seen the movie, you know why it's there. But that's actually a movie I want to see, is Singing in the Rain. I'll never see that song the same. Maybe when I see the movie I will, but after watching this movie, I never could hear that song and not think of what's happening in the movie at that time. But I'm not going to ruin the movie or really talk about what happens in this movie. For those of you who know the movie, understand why. But the next record, I was excited to find this, but I'm not keeping this copy of this record. I'm going to be still on the lookout for this record, because this has a handful of skips in it. Still playable, but I just really, this is one of those albums that, I mean, I want all my albums in perfect condition to play, but this is one of them that I really would rather have one that doesn't have any skips in it. This would be Cosmo's Factory by CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival. Fantastic record. This is the first time I ever heard this album in its entirety. Even with the skips, I still enjoyed it, but as I said, I'm not going to be keeping it because of those skips, and this is one I want to hold out for a better copy. And this is on Fantasy, and this is it's to the point where I don't have as much space to be able to just hold placeholder albums. So, but still a very good record. If anybody wants a copy of it, full disclosure, it skips a couple times. But if anybody wants a copy of Cosmo's Factory by CCR, give me a line, contact me on Instagram or something, and see if we could do something for you. But it, as I said, skips. I'll give you a fair price for it. I'm not going to screw you over, and I'm not going to tell you that it doesn't skip, because it does. I'm not one of those people who's going to BS you. Another Creedence Clearwater Revival album, More Creedence Gold. I didn't even know there was a More Creedence Gold. I knew there was Creedence Gold because my grandfather owned an original pressing of that in his collection, but now I have the More. And it's just Greatest Hits by CCR. It has Fortunate Son, it has Who Will Stop the Rain, Good Golly, Miss Molly, which was not originally CCR, but a good cover. I Put a Spell on You, Up Around the Bend, a bunch of great stuff on here. You can't really go wrong with this. This band, when I saw this in this guy's collection, I was very excited. Def Leppard's On Through the Night and Def Leppard's High and Dry. I've heard this album before because I own this on cassette. Someone gave me it on cassette years ago. But this I'd never heard before, and I'm listening to both of these records, not really recognizing any songs, and I hear on High and Dry, Bringing on the Heartache, and I was like, whoa, I forgot Def Leppard did that song, and I didn't even know that was on this album. Oh, I was thrilled. So, two great records Def Leppard put out. These are some of the more exciting records that I grabbed were these Def Leppard ones. This one skips a whole bunch, but I'm going to keep it anyway because I really enjoyed this album. It's not one that you really see often. Dion and the Belmonts, When You Wish Upon a Star. Yes, it's a cover of the Disney song, but they do a damn good job of it. I really don't have much to say about this because I've only listened to it once, don't really know it well, but my grandfather really enjoyed Dion and the Belmonts, so I grabbed this to see how I liked it, and I enjoyed it. Even with the spin clean, though, it skips, unfortunately, but it's still in playable condition. This is an artist that back when I had a free trial of SiriusXM radio, I was listening to Willie's Roadhouse, which is the oldies country pretty much, for those who are not familiar, and discovered this artist, even though this artist was releasing stuff in the 70s initially, so I didn't really consider it that terribly old, but either way, I enjoyed it. My grandfather owned one of this person's records. I now own one or two of his other studio albums in my records, but I just got Greatest Hits Volume 1 and 2 of Eddie Rabbitt. And for those of you who do not know who Eddie Rabbitt is, really the hits that you might know would be Drinking My Baby Off My Mind, Rocky Mountain Music, let's see, Love a Rainy Night, that was his biggest hit, I believe, and Driving My Life Away. I believe those were the biggest hits from him that you would probably recognize, and even if you don't recognize them, they're still fantastic. If you like country, older country from the 70s, then you'll enjoy that. And speaking of a very older record, and this is an RCA Camden, so it's not super old, or it's a repress from the 60s. I'm not sure which. But this is Eddie Arnold's More Eddie Arnold album. Eddie Arnold is pretty much a country crooner voice, and this actually came out in 1960. So, I'm seeing the copyright here. And this was a great record. I really only knew Eddie Arnold for a song called Cattle Call, because my grandfather introduced me to that song, and then I just wanted to listen to more Eddie Arnold, and I learned that he wasn't just a complete hillbilly country singer, but he was like the Johnny Mathis of country music. So he was very pleasant surprised when I heard more than just Cattle Call. This next record I recently acquired would be Who Loves You by the Four Seasons. This is my first Four Seasons record. I have 3 45 RPM records, singles, but this is my first 12-inch album. This has Who Loves You and December 1969, Oh What a Night. I believe those are the only songs that were well known off this. How cool is that record? He's just holding that lady there. It's just cool. It's just not my favorite record of all time, but it's definitely worth the keep. This was another one of those records that I didn't really know anything about, but I nearly made brownies because I just saw the artist and was like, holy crap, I don't see this artist often, especially for the price I'm about to pay for it, especially for the condition it's in. This would be a Frank Zappa record, one of his instrumental records called Jazz from Hell. This is one of his 80s albums, so he definitely got a little crazier in the 80s, as if he wasn't crazy enough in the 70s and 60s, but it's definitely weird. It's not one I want to hear often. I've already heard it 3 times since I've gotten it, because I also got it on CD now, but it's definitely unique. Frank Zappa and jazz, I mean, I'm sure those of you who are familiar with Frank Zappa can only imagine. This one is completely out of left field compared to Frank Zappa. This is Harry Belafonte's Calypso. And I know I just did a VCLT video with this featured, but this was in a pile I recently listened to, so I figured to talk about it again because I've now listened to it. I only knew the song Deo, the Banana Boat song. Daytime comes and I want to go home. Oh, it's so fun. But yeah, this is a fantastic record. I did not know much from this record, or know much about it. Truly, it was kind of like a blind buy in a way, even though I believe that Chris Has the Spins kind of just threw this in for me because I was paying for 2 other records he was sending my way, and I just shared an interest in this. But either way, I didn't know much about it, and I was pleasantly surprised. It's kind of like island music, like Jamaican, like... It was cool. I don't know if Harry Belafonte is Jamaican or not, but it's definitely Jamaican island music. And I really enjoyed it. And it's very interesting reading the back of records. If you guys don't do this, especially with older records like this with all this detailed information, read the back of the records, man. Because I'll tell you, they tell you a lot of cool stuff, especially with jazz records. Jazz records are really what started me with doing that. And then I started doing it more with the newer records that I acquired. When I pull out older records, I'll start reading those too, because it's really interesting. You learn a lot. Another one, completely different from the last record. This would be a group called Hooters, Nervous Night. This was one of those blind grabs in a group collection that I was going through. Heard of the group, but didn't know anything from them. Looked up which songs were the hits. Can't remember which ones they are, but I enjoyed the record. It's not one that I'm sure if I'm going to completely keep yet. I want to listen to it again once or twice, but it was a good record. So Hooters. This came out in '85, so it was a cool record. This is an artist by the name of Jeff Beck. Album Wired. I only know his album Blow by Blow and his album Jeff that came out in like 2005 or something like that. I was only passively listening to this. I was doing work when I was listening to this, so that could also play a part in my opinion on this since I've only heard it once, only really in the grand scheme of things, passing. Compared to Blow by Blow, I do not think this stands its ground. Still a great guitar record, still... I mean, it's Jeff Beck. So, but this is his Wired album. This is a record I've been looking for since I was in high school, and I'm now very thrilled to own it. This would be Jethro Tull's album, Songs from the Wood. I don't know any of the hits off it. I just know that music. I don't know hits, what were hits by Jethro Tull and all that. I just know the albums that I own and that I enjoy them. So Jethro Tull isn't a band I know much about. I think it's cool, the back cover. It has like a tree trunk as a record player. But when I saw this, I was ecstatic. The record has some like, not the record stuff, but the sleeve as if it was like standing up and just was leaning against a wall, bent a little bit, but that's okay. You know, I was just thrilled to have it, and the record is in near mint condition, VG+, so I can't complain. Especially for the price, because all these, I'm telling you, I got deals on these things. I was blown away. I was only gonna, and they offered me, asked me what I felt for the price would be fair, and I was like, initially I was only gonna pay this, but I'm seeing what I got, so I'm giving you this. I actually paid more than I was initially planning to pay, and it was like, I met these people at a garage sale for some of these records, and they were not ready to sell the records. They wanted their family to go through it, see what they wanted first, which is fair. And then I got to see the leftovers, and it's still killer. I was thrilled. And another one of those records that were not in that collection, actually. I got this for $1 from the same place that I got the Brenda Lee dollar record. Thankfully, this one doesn't have one of those freaking stupid stickers on it. But this is Joe Cocker's record, Joe Cocker. Don't let the cover fool you. This is not a live album, even though it features 2 live tracks. This is mainly a studio record, and I really enjoyed this record. Joe Cocker is not one that I've ever gotten into. I was given a handful of his CDs, mainly greatest hits CDs, but I was given a copy of his studio album with a little help from my friends, which was great. I loved it. I actually loved this too. I didn't go into this with high hopes, but I really enjoyed this. And it was funny because I was listening to this and Woman to Woman comes on. And I'm just like, I recognize that beat. I look up the song Woman to Woman, And it turns out that Tupac sampled it on one of his songs on his album All Eyes on Me. I cannot remember the name of the song. I want to say it's like California Love or something like that. I can't remember. I'm not good with hip hop. I do enjoy that album, but I'm not good with hip hop. But either way, this was a fantastic record. I was pleasantly surprised. I will be definitely keeping this. I'll definitely be spinning this again. Joe Cocker is not someone I actively look for. If there are other things that people recommend, obviously I'll give it a shot. But that was Joe Cocker. Here's an artist. This is another record I got at Station 1 Books and Records. Johnny Cash is an artist that I don't have much of, whether it be on vinyl record or CD. I don't think I own any on cassette or 8-track. I know I don't own 8-track. Cassette I might from my grandfather, but I'm not sure. But I have more vinyl records than any of those. Vinyl records and CDs. Johnny Cash is an artist I want to find his entire discography, and he's just not one I see regularly. Which is kind of disappointing. When I do, it's usually beaten to hell. My grandfather is who helped me get most of my Johnny Cash records because he was a big country buff and he had a whole bunch of his records. I've only ever, on vinyl record, purchased 2 Johnny Cash records, and I'm holding one in my hand, which I'm about to show you, and the other one, my grandfather ended up having a copy in his collection, so I gave mine away to a friend. So this is an album by Johnny Cash from the 70s called Hello, I'm Johnny Cash. And this has the hit, If I Were a Carpenter, that he did with his wife. This was a great record. I was very happy. Really, there's not a single Johnny Cash ear that I don't like. There are some people who are like, oh, the 80s ruined everything, which, I mean, somewhat yes, because the 80s were very inconsistent with artists who are on the scene for 20 years beforehand, then they went into the 80s. It's completely different. The 80s were very inconsistent. But Johnny Cash was very consistent. He followed the times, created music that was similar to the country music of the time, and really country music kind of did stay kind of consistent, in my opinion, for the times. And Johnny Cash did a very good job of that, so I'm really looking forward to trying to find some of his 80s work. But Johnny Cash, I want to find all of his stuff. If anybody wants to hook me up, I would love it. Along with Def Leppard and Frank Zappa, this was another artist that in the collection, when I saw this artist, I keep saying it, but I was making brownies, like, oh my god. Judas Priest, their 3rd studio album, Sin by Sin, which was fantastic. I loved every moment of this. Can't wait to play it again. I was very thrown off because they did a cover of Joan Baez's Diamonds and Rust, which was surprisingly very good, but I just was not expecting it. We got a live album, Judas Priest Unleashed in the East, made in Japan, which came out in 1979, so this was still fairly early on, even though their 3rd album came out in 77, so actually it wasn't too terribly early on, but they had a few records out. And then the one I was most excited for, Screaming for Vengeance by Judas Priest, that came out in 1982. You've got another thing coming in Screaming for Vengeance. I mean, who doesn't know metal music and doesn't know that? But of course, Electric Eye. I mean, there's nothing I can't say about Judas Priest Screaming for Vengeance that hasn't already been said in the metal vinyl community. That's one of the best metal albums of all time, in my opinion. One of Judas Priest's best, in my opinion. And I really enjoyed it. This is a record that I owned previously, purchased, sold it. Not because I didn't like it, but it was one I was like, I'm not going to really listen to this much. Well, it was in this person's collection, and I grabbed it, and I guess it's my way of the vinyl gods telling me, you need this record to stay in your collection, leave it there, don't get rid of it, I'm just going to give you a whole nother one in your path. So I'm going to keep this. And this was actually one of my childhood albums. If you've watched my Ton Jump on It, Tunes at the Man Cave 500 Subs contest, I talked about this on CD, but now I have the record. Men at Work, Business as Usual. Songs Who Can It Be Now, I Can See It in Your Eyes, Down Under, and Be Good Johnny are my favorites. I love it. Heard this a lot as a kid. Heard it on cassette originally, and now I have it on record. This was a semi-blind buy. And by the way, Chris, I took the shrink wrap off of this one, if you're watching Tunes from Man Cave. So, this had a whole hype sticker, had a whole price sticker on it, original. I removed the shrink, don't worry. I know this artist, but I didn't know anything by name on this album. This is an artist that I hear the songs I know, but by name, I'm shit out of luck. It would be Randy Travis. This is an album called No Holding Back. This is the second Randy Travis vinyl record I own. My grandfather owned his greatest hits on CD. Very great album. I really don't have much to say about it. It's just 80s country for you. For those of you who know who Randy Travis is, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's Just a Matter of Time was a really great song. Hard Rock Bottom of Your Heart I really enjoyed. Mining for Coal was fantastic. It was a very good record. It was not that I expected it to be bad because I knew who Randy Travis was, but it was a very good blind buy because I knew who Randy Travis was, but I didn't really know the record. This is what I was talking about a few records back with the Johnny Cash record where the 80s got kind of wacky. It's funny because I purchased this record and then me and Tunes from the Man Cave Chris were actually just talking about, not too long after I purchased the album, before I even listened to it, about how the 80s were weird and all this stuff. And this is an album I've seen for a while, just one of those albums by the band The Rolling Stones that I just see countless copies of. I kind of understand why people don't buy it. It wasn't terrible, but compared to what I've other 80s works from the Rolling Stones I've heard, this is kind of terrible. I need to give it another spin, to give it another chance, and I want to keep it in my collection because I have almost no Rolling Stones, and I've been trying to build up a Rolling Stones collection. But this is their album Undercover, right? Undercover? Yeah, Undercover. I mean, that album cover alone is freaking wacky. But there are a few good songs on it, but as I said, it was quite wacky. This is one that I don't think anybody is really going to be familiar with. This is a group called the Screen Idols, and it's their album Premiere. This is a factory sample that is not for sale. Has a little sticker there. And this album kind of reminded me of, like, this album came out in 1979, but kind of reminded me of, like, synth poppy kind of stuff. Kind of reminded me of, like, some Cyndi Lauper kind of stuff and all that. A little bit of Pat Benatar mixed in there, along with a little bit of Madonna. I saw this album. This one was one I was just given it for free. I saw it, didn't have much thoughts on it. I kind of thought it was going to suck based on the album cover. Because, I mean, just look at that album cover. They're just, the back covers would have had me a little bit more sold on it. Because it took me a long time to actually pull this record out to listen to. But I loved it once I heard it. It's on a record label called Cobra, which I have never heard of. But it has a really cool record label there. And spinning, it's just like it's kind of a spiral going around. It was kind of cool. I definitely am looking forward to hearing this record again. As I said, I was very pleasantly surprised by this record. So it's not often that I like to judge a record by its cover. But this one I was definitely hardcore judging. Because I don't like judging things before I hear it. I like giving everything a chance. But this one I was just like, yeah, let's do it. I was cleaning my room, put it on. I was dancing along like a maniac. I loved it. Completely opposite direction from dancing. This is a 60s group that the VC doesn't really talk about. Most people don't talk about. Most people like to forget that they existed. Unless it's a song. It Ain't Me, Babe, or I Got You, Babe, or something like that. It'd be Sonny and Cher. And this is their record, In Case You're in Love. I bought this for $1. Didn't have high hopes. My grandfather had Sonny and Cher's greatest hits. I only listened to it once. That was a couple years ago. Thought it sucked. But I wanted to give him another chance. So I bought, instead of listening to my grandfather's greatest hits album that he had, what did I do? I bought it by $1 record by them that I don't own and could still hate. So I used a lot of logic there. But, this was fun. Groovy Kind of Love was cool. This was actually a pleasant surprise. It has a hit. The beat goes on, as you can tell by the slightly ripped sticker. No, that's not on the shrink. That's on the actual record itself. This is a stereo pressing. I don't know if they ever did mono pressings of Sonny and Cher, but this came out in '67, so it might have had a mono press. But I'm more than happy with this one. And the record has a slight warp to the edge of it, but it really doesn't affect playback. Thankfully, I was a little concerned, but I was willing to give it a slight risk because I only paid $1 for it. This is a record that is fairly common in some places and not so much in others. This is Traffic, the Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys. I don't really know what to say about this record, truly. I enjoyed it. It was not a bad record. I don't know why many Traffic records have these cuts on the sides. It seems like Traffic did that with almost every single one of their records, and it's more rare to find a Traffic record with the full jacket than not. And I know they were originally cut off because, actually, I stand corrected. I think they did it intentionally because these inner sleeves are ripped just like it. It's not like showing like, oh, cut something off and all that. So actually I stand corrected with what I was about to say. But I still see a whole bunch of their records that don't have, if someone knows anything about why the Traffic records are cut like this on almost all of their albums that I've seen, let me know. I find it odd. I enjoyed this record. It was not the best Traffic record I ever heard, but I enjoyed it. But yeah, if you know anything about those corn things, I've always been curious. Got two other records by this is a hair metal group. This would be Triumph, Just a Game, and Allied Forces. I've heard of Allied Forces and Play a Game. Right? Yeah. Oh no, Just a Game. My mistake. I've never heard any of them. I've seen this one around. This one I've never seen in person before. But this has the hit Lay It on the Line. If you don't know Triumph's Lay It on the Line by name, look it up. I'm sure you've heard it on the radio at least once. Some great metal music. More hairish metal music, more like the early Kiss, early Def Leppard kind of stuff that I was talking about with whatever the other record I was talking about was. I'm drawing a blank at the moment. But yeah, I was happy to see that. This one was a blind buy. I see things that are quite old, and they intrigue me. And what intrigued me even more was the record label on this, which I'll show you in a moment. This is the Broadway soundtrack for Two on the Aisle, which came out in the early 50s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've done research on this. I got this a while ago, and I'm just now getting to making a recent finds video, so some of these are a couple months old. But as if that old cover doesn't make you intrigued alone, this Decca label made me intrigued. That is an old Decca label. That is an old Decca label. And I was pleasantly surprised because not only was it a cool old blind buy, just for the album cover and for the record having that cool label itself, but this is a fantastic show tune soundtrack. I didn't know it, but I liked it. And what's cool is this, on the top here, it says it's also available in Decca 78 RPM albums and 45 RPM albums. I didn't know they ever made 45 RPM albums. I knew about the 78 albums, but that's how old this thing is. They were advertising 78 still, which I've actually never seen on a record until I grabbed this record, so I found that to be cool. But that was a very great blind buy. Y'all are gonna laugh at me for this one, but I went back and forth. This was a record I got for free. This was one I went back and forth. Am I going to keep this? Am I not going to keep this? Had it on my record shelf. Then I put it in my cell box. Then I brought it back. Gave it another listen. I decided I'm going to keep it. It's the only record I ever want to own by this person. Unless someone shows me something immaculate, which I really don't think you will. But Wayne Newton's album Dankeschön, which kind of is bothersome to me because they spelled it like an American would. It's spelled in German properly, and the way an English person would. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the official German spelling of the word schön should have an umlaut over the O. I want to become fluent in German one day. I'm teaching myself, so I know very little. So I could be wrong, but I believe that's how it's supposed to be spelled, so that slightly bothers me. But it's on the Rainbow Capital label, so it's an original press. I don't know what to say to that. That's just like one of those like little. It's one of those more obscure, weirder records in my collection. Not weird like psychedelic crazy or Britney Spears crazy, something like. It's just that one that you just don't see and many people don't pick up. It's kind of like he has like a Frank Sinatra-esque kind of vibe, but higher pitched voice and a little bit cheesier. This record was a fairly blind buy as well. Steve Carlson, for those of you familiar in the VC, puts out his weekly Sunday videos. Occasionally puts out one during the week, but mainly Sunday. He talked about this record. He recently acquired this, and the next day I went to the Princeton Record Exchange and I found a copy for $2 in decent condition. So I decided to pick it up myself and give it a try. This would be an album by a group called We Five. Make someone happy. So Steve, if you're watching and you've made it this far into the video, thank you for this recommendation. It's because of you I have this in my hand, and I truly enjoyed it. So there's that. This is a record that I've been looking for quite a while. This one I'm going to show you the label for because you might know what the record is, but you might not have ever seen the record before. This is Back to the Egg by Paul McCartney and the Wings. This is a record I've been looking for a while. Definitely not my favorite Wings album. I need to listen to it a second time, give it more of a chance. It was a good album. It's not the worst Wings album in my opinion. And I can't really say what the worst one is yet because I haven't heard them all. But something that I really enjoyed about this record is it says it's not side 1 or side 2, it's sunny side up or over easy. I guess going with the theme of Back to the Egg. So it has an egg as a label. That would be the sunny side up, and that would be over easy. So I thought that was kind of cool. And got this for a good price, because I've seen this album way overpriced, in my humble opinion. So I haven't purchased it because I'm not going to pay $10 for a common Paul McCartney album. Because an album, especially this album, it's not worth it. I found it for $3. I was very happy. I've been trying to get every single Paul McCartney and Wings record, so I'm definitely looking forward to grabbing that. And the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 albums are all by the same artist, ZZ Top. In my life, I've ever owned one of these records before. I owned the one record on CD as well, but I owned it on record at one point, got rid of it because it was in terrible condition. I learned how to take care of records. I learned what record grading is. I learned that you don't want to play crappy records. Got rid of it because it was in crappy condition. But I'll get to that one when it shows up. I'll tell you which record it was. I'm sure you could possibly already guess. But first ZZ Top record, Fandango. This is a half live album and half studio album. In my opinion, the live album side sucks. I did think their cover of Jailhouse Rock was kind of cool, but really, that was about it. That did it for me. Obviously, I should listen to it again and not just judge it based on one play, but based on one play, that's my current verdict. But this has the hits, Heard It on the X and Tush, or Tush. So, that was a good record. The very first greatest hits that ZZ Top ever released, the best of ZZ Top. This came out in the 70s, so this doesn't have things like Sharp Dressed Man or Give Me All Your Lovin', but it does have Lagrange. So, ZZ Top's best of. I'm going to butcher this name. Digalulo? Digulo. If someone knows how to pronounce this, put it phonetically in the comment section below and I'm going to attempt to figure it out. But this album by ZZ Top. It has a single, Cheap Sunglasses. This is a fantastic record. I actually was listening to this for a second time the other day. El Loco by ZZ Top. This is a fun record too. And this is a record that I initially owned, got rid of, and only owned on CD until recently. ZZ Top's Eliminator. Their most well-known album. With Legs, Give Me All Your Lovin', Sharp Dressed Man, Got Me Under Pressure, all that stuff. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised with the ZZ Top records, because I was excited to find them, but I wasn't sure what to expect, because I only knew their hits. So I really enjoyed those. So, those are my recent finds. Hope you enjoyed. Give me a comment, like down below. Let me know what you're thinking, what your thoughts are. Tell me about some of your recent finds. And I'll see you on the next video.